All right, so welcome to today's live lesson for AS English. Let me share my screen with you. And in today's lesson, we are going to look at analyzing a text as we normally do. But this is a particular kind of text. This is a journal. And if you want to follow in your course book, you can turn to page 39. It's based on activity 1.33. All right, so just in case you want to follow in your book, you are more than welcome to. So let's say you are confronted with a journal extract. How do you go about trying to get to its deeper meaning to analyze what is going on in the text? Well, first of all, how do you know what kind of text it is? Well, because we have a date. Usually, journals or diaries are dated entries, aren't they? So this is one date that we can see, so one diary entry. There aren't any other dates to follow it. And it says 20th of April. And it starts out by giving us some context. Yesterday, up early in the morning, the washing, the dressing, the brushing, then to the station on my bicycle. Everything planned, everything done, the ticket bought, the clean gloves in the pocket. Right, so we know that this person has had to get ready for something. And I'm sorry, I'm just filling around to get the chat box here on the side in case you want to add some comments or questions, so feel free to do that. This person is talking about what happened yesterday. Up early in the morning, okay, so obviously something's going to be happening. What had to be done? The chores, the washing, the dressing, the brushing. Then, after all of that had been done, to the station on my bicycle. The person has cycled to the train station. Everything planned, everything done, the ticket bought, the clean gloves in the pocket. Interesting that the ticket has been bought because what this insinuates is there is no turning back. Okay. That's what is being implied. There is no turning back. Okay. Now, from this little section of small details, this idea of busyness and getting ready and preparation and setting off, we then come to the train station. How late the train was. Waiting there. Look at this repetition of waiting. Why do you think this is repeated? Waiting. I'll be quiet to let you type your answer. Okay, sorry, just because we're always limited for time, I'll have to give the answer. Okay, waiting, because this emphasizes the fact that the speaker is waiting. It's for emphasis, isn't it? Emphasizes the long wait. It's almost like we are drawn into, oh, there's a good suggestion. It's almost like we're drawn into this waiting with the writer. And here are some suggestions coming through. Great. Okay, so perhaps this person is impatient. Yes, look how organized they are. They've done this, that, this, everything, ready to go. And what? The train is late. Okay, great. So yes, perhaps showing some sort of temperament there. And then also perhaps to create an effect of anticipation. There's that as well. Yes, very nice. We're waiting for this train. We're ready to go. Anticipation, very nice. So I'll write that here. Impatience. So we're talking about temperament here. Impatience. We're talking about anticipation. Very nice suggestions. Okay. Then something happens. Then the bursting carriages, so they're full. The bursting carriages, they get filled up very quickly. The bursting carriages and all the passage filled with soldiers. Now we are given more context. And perhaps this then makes more sense because soldiers are generally very prepared, very organized, very methodical. They get things done. And what has this person done? The washing, the dressing, the brushing, station, clean gloves, everything. Good, organized, boom. Sort of like a military sort of mindset going on there. So then the bursting carriages and all the passage filled with soldiers. Their tin hats, bottles, knapsacks, hitting on the walls when they turned. So because tin hats were generally a thing that soldiers of the past would have been wearing, we can assume that this is set in the past. Most likely World War II, World War I, World War II, something like that. Their tin hats, bottles, and knapsacks, their backpacks. Hitting on the walls when they turned, that's how cramped the carriage was. I wondered how I could stand. And there's an ellipsis. All right, I wondered how I could stand. And this ellipsis reflects this idea of wondering, doesn't it? Have a look at that. I wondered how I could stand. It's almost like that ellipsis gives pause for this wondering. I tried to sit down in the loop of a strap. Okay, so there must have been some sort of strap that could be sat on. Instead of a seat, there's maybe a strap. Then on a fire extinguisher, so the loop of the strap wasn't quite enough to hold this person, and so it possibly wasn't for sitting. Then on a fire extinguisher, also not a great idea. Sore, painful, I felt desperate. How ill and tired I would be if I could not sit down. So this person is not in the greatest of health, yet they are here calling in for duty. Okay, so maybe they have some sort of issue with their health that has been affecting them, and so they have to be able to sit for this very long journey that's going to happen. So sore and painful, I felt desperate. So do you see the feelings that are coming through? You must focus on what the speaker is saying here. They are sore, they are painful, and he feels desperate. That's interesting, desperate. How ill and tired, that reflects this idea of sore and painful. Can you see how all these words relate to or have connotations of ill health? How ill and tired I would be if I could not sit down. So all he has to be able to do is to be able to sit down. I gazed at the fat suitcase for some time. Then at last, I dared to sit down on it. So this is not his suitcase. This is somebody else's suitcase. But he's so desperate, he sits down on it. Okay, and then what happens? Pleasure, bliss, gazing out of the window, sitting down at last. So, do we get the impression that this is an active person? Okay, I'm just gonna, I'll just carry on because it's hard to wait for your responses if we're limited to time. So, good, yes, it doesn't seem like it. That's right, it doesn't seem like it, does it? Because this desperate need to sit, and as soon as the person has sat down, it's all good. And now they're happy. There's pleasure and bliss. These both have positive connotations, don't they? Much more positive connotations, meaning secondary meanings. And in a way, this might point to the fact that this soldier has been called up for duty, and anybody who was between a certain age range would have been called up for duty. And unless they had a really, really good reason, an official document of some kind to not be called up, even that might have been overlooked, you had to go and do your duty. And so what is important to the speaker is to be able to have some sort of form of comfort. The speaker, the soldier, is not even in the midst of battle yet. And they're already struggling psychically, mentally. Okay. Now he's gazing out the window. Let's have a look at the setting that he creates. The fields, the feathery trees, wonderful poison green. Oh, that's interesting. Wonderful poison green. Okay, so it must be a very strong green that he's looking out outside the window. Fresh as new lettuce. Okay, so some positive connotations still coming through. The fields, the feathery trees, they're nice and soft, they're appealing. Wonderful poison. Now, when you have two unexpected terms next to one another, for example, if you were to describe protesters as a peaceful army, do we expect armies to be peaceful? Generally not. And it's the same kind of concept here. A wonderful poison, we don't expect poison to be wonderful, but here, because the green is so vivid, it's almost poisonous, okay? This works. So this is called an oxymoron. When you get two terms that are contradictory, but in the context it makes sense. Okay, so use these, show the marker that you have the knowledge of figurative language behind you and that you can apply it to a text. So this wonderful poison green, fresh as new lettuce, the large, lonely young man carrying a huge implement, some sort of tool, right? Testing your vocabulary here, a huge implement across unending fields. So he's still looking out the window. He sees a young man working in the fields, possibly plowing the fields. Then the long, long tunnel. Look at this. It's mirroring what he does here. Waiting, waiting, long, long. And that point about impatience coming through perhaps again. In the long, long tunnel with its whistle and the belching white smoke. Belching is not a positive, it doesn't have positive connotations. It links this idea of burping almost, of belching. It's not a pretty sight to see this belching white smoke. Not escaping, flowing over the train in a thick cape. So they're in the train, this smoke is not coming out the tunnel, or it's not escaping into the air like it was before. Now it's in the tunnel and it's building up. And not only that, sparks flew from the railway lines. Sparks flew and faded. And now we come into more imagery, all right, into figurative language. The red demon glow on the white smoke belchings. Okay, so there's a red demon glow on the white smoke belchings. These sparks and the smoke, he is likening to kind of some sort of glow that a demon would give off. The red demon glow on the white smoke belchings and the growing of it. It's just getting more and more till I was really ready for some catastrophe. This tells us something about the writer's mindset. They can see the beauty in the world, but they can also see something very negative. And it might even be bordering on paranoia, perhaps. So I was really ready for some catastrophe. Can something be on fire? Rhetorical question, showing uncertainty, doesn't it? Can something be on fire? Will the engine burst and the driver be burnt to death in the steam, as I have read? So this is a well-read person. And generally, if you're well-read, you could have these kind of ideas because you've been exposed to them in literature. So, but the point is, the rhetorical question highlights doubt. It also highlights fear, doesn't it? So will the engine burst and the driver be burnt to death in the steam, as I have read? Will I be groping in wreckage in the dark tunnel? So his worst nightmares are coming to him here. And this idea of groping, why is that a good word to use? Will I be groping in wreckage in the dark tunnel? Yes, another rhetorical question. Why is groping an effective verb? What does it suggest? Good, yes, it suggests panic. Good, and we can link this panic to fear, can't we? It suggests panic. Also, when you grope, it kind of suggests that you can't see anything, right? Because you're kind of feeling for things, holding on in panic and feeling for things, groping. So you are completely in the dark, and yes, panic. So very, very negative ideas coming through this questioning. And then the speaker continues, all this through my mind and more. So feeling paranoid. And then we're given something about his childhood. No change from early childhood. So this suggests that this is something that the writer does in situations that he is unfamiliar with. Probably panics or has a very, very vivid imagination, and he thinks the worst. He thinks the worst. It's also almost like an automatic reaction. He can't help it. Just like when he was a child, he would always think the worst. He was paranoid. Then, so something else changes. Then the sooted walls, this wall covered in soot in the tunnel, seen faintly. The lamps of some workers in the tunnel, like miners' lamps or the lamps of jailers in a dungeon. So he moves from the practical to sort of something very negative and sort of dark and to the figurative. So lamps of jailers in a dungeon. Notice the use of similes, right? Like miners' lamps or the lamps of jailers in a dungeon. It is like a haunted house. Look at that alliteration. Haunted house. Drawing us into this idea of something being a bit sort of ghostly, a bit otherworldly. The green. Playing on the idea of green again. Luminous, bright, skeleton. should descend, should come down, champing its terrible jaws. Champing is a very extreme form of biting. Champ. Its terrible jaws, grinning, which makes it even worse. Imagine the skeleton descending, champing its jaws and grinning at the same time. Like, it's very happy to be given this menacing gesture of biting, of suggesting attack. So what strange imagery to be going through his mind when he's on this train going through the tunnel. The concrete grime, the dirt, it's distasteful grime. Then at last, the air that came out of the tunnel. All these paranoid thoughts, but now at last, the air. On and on. Look at the repetition of that word, on and on, just as we saw before. It's mirroring the writer's way of speaking, of writing. Quite happy now. Almost peaceful. Almost peaceful. Isn't that such a strange way to end off this particular diary entry? And this really gives us some insight into the writer's mind. The way that they think, the way that they see things. They are very sensitive, and things affect them far more deeply than it probably affects all the other people on the train. I mean, I'm generalizing here. We don't know for sure, but these are strange thoughts to be having when traveling through a tunnel. It's just a tunnel and you're on a train, and yes, the smoke in the tunnel goes through the tunnel. That's what happens. But this writer turns it into something very, very emotional, very, very psychological. And it shows us that perhaps it's not just his physical health, but also his mental health, which is questionable. So keeping all of this in mind, I would like to show you a student's response to this activity. So here it is, activity 1.33. Now write a short commentary on the passage. You could use the following prompts to help you structure what you have to say. And when they give you this possibility of using something, use it, okay? Because it really keeps you on the straight and narrow. So you'd have to use something like, the account begins briskly, almost matter-of-factly, with routines such as, and we'll have a look at that. We'll have a look at that in the answer here. So you'd have to look at how you introduce the commentary. That's what it's saying ultimately, how you go into the introduction of the commentary. And then later on in the commentary, you'd say, then there is a change of mood as the writer recounts the physical aspects of the journey. And then you would explore that. And then finally, near the end of your commentary, you'd say, after that, the description is laced, is filled with striking, often nightmarish images and visions, as shown by, and then you would develop that idea. And why I am talking you through this is to show you how you can go about approaching a commentary. When you look at a text, you can't just look at the beginning of the text and the end of the text. Look at everything that happens. There is always, generally, there's always movement in a text. There is an opening, introducing certain ideas that are developed, and then it goes somewhere. So movement is important, and the movement of the text needs to be reflected in your commentary. Your commentary must move through the text. Okay, so don't leave out important concepts. But at the same time, don't just talk about everything. There are certain ideas that are important that should stand out. Now let's have a look at what the student said. We're going to run out of time, so I'm just going to read through it. Please bear with me. The account begins briskly, almost matter-of-factly, with routines such as the washing, the dressing, the brushing. It appears from the introduction that the writer is very efficient and organized, as shown by the repetition in everything planned, everything done. Okay, repetition. This person, the student who's writing here, is aware of the kinds of techniques that are used to create ideas in commentaries, okay, to create ideas in text, sorry. This contrasts with his uncertainty once he gets to the train station. So yes, we see this uncertainty creeping in as he comes to the train station, where the train is late. A sense of emptiness and an uneasy silence is created by the repetition, waiting, waiting there. Yes, uneasiness. Okay. And I'm showing you where I've ticked because that shows that the student has made a relevant point. Then there is a change of mood as the writer recounts the physical aspects of the journey. The triplet, tin hats, bottles, knapsacks, illustrates the claustrophobic atmosphere on the train. So it's not just the soldiers, it's tin hats, it's their bottles, it's the knapsacks. What a great observation to make. Okay. And what is the effect that's created? Well, it's claustrophobic. A sense of discomfort and busyness develops as the soldiers, bear with me here, as the soldiers' possessions are hitting on the walls when they turn. This discomfort is further developed by the adjectival phrase sore, painful, this idea of discomfort. And then the student went on to say, due to this unpleasant atmosphere, and I've said, just want to show you the comment that I've made there, avoid starting sentences with due to, okay? And the reason for that is due to essentially stands for caused by, so you cannot start a sentence with due to, okay? Caused by, that's not going to work. So she could have reworded this. Due to this unpleasant atmosphere developed, the sense of relief is amplified, what a lovely word to use, when the writer can finally sit down. And this is shown by the abstract nouns pleasure and bliss. Look how cleverly the student has juxtaposed, has opposed sore and painful with pleasure and bliss, and used some very interesting vocabulary whilst doing that. And also that the student has realized these are abstract nouns, which means they are not tangible. They are not something we can feel. Yes, they are things, they exist, pleasure exists, bliss exists, but we can't grasp onto them, we can't group, okay, these nouns. So that's why it's an abstract noun. Okay, so this student is clever because they're showing that they understand how language works and what language, being able to identify a language when they encounter it. Okay. This sense of ease and freedom continues with the use of alliteration in fields, feathery trees, fresh as new lettuce, and the adjective unending, which are used to describe the landscape. The writer has a moment of relief when he can actually appreciate the beauty of the passing landscape. After this, however, the description is laced. Now, look, now the student is bringing in that recommended idea. After this, however, the description is laced with striking, often nightmarish images and visions, as shown by, and they continue, the adjective belching, used to describe the smoke coming from the train. As the smoke covers the train in a thick cape, notice how well this student incorporates quotes so that it's almost like you're reading a sentence, whether the quote was in it or not. It just makes complete sense. So as the smoke covers the train in a thick cape, the writer feels trapped and smothered as it enters the dark tunnel. It appears that he has some fear of tunnels, developed from early childhood. It is fear and panic. His fear and panic is illustrated by the constant flow of questions, such as, can something be on fire? Will I be groping in wreckage? Will I be groping in wreckage, full stop. It is fear of the tunnel, which leads him to compare it to a haunted house. This simile is supported by personification, where the luminous skeleton descends, champing its jaws, grinning. Okay, so giving some sort of human-like traits, okay, grinning and biting. These images imply that the writer views the tunnel as being evil and menacing, as if its purpose is to kill him. These deathly images contrast with the phrase, then at last the air. This reveals his sense of freedom and relief as he exits the tunnel, as if a heavy burden has been lifted. It appears that the writer now feels safe again, as shown by the abstract noun, peaceful, used to close his diary entry. Do you see how inclusive the student has been identifying the kind of writing, using those suggested sentences, these deathly images? I mean, this is what was given in the suggested sentences. Everything has been incorporated. Language has been identified. Quotes make sense in where they are in the sentence. It's almost as if you can read it without even noticing there's a quote in it. That's how you know your quote works well. And just be able to explain the effect something has. Why does that simile work well? Because it shows his panic, it highlights his fear, it shows his fear of claustrophobia, etc., etc. So this is what you're doing when you give a commentary. You're looking very, very closely at language. You are explaining what's happening, how we can get to meaning, how we get more insight into the writer's mind by breaking down very central concepts in the passage. Okay, and this is the kind of thing you have to do when you do commentary. It's about making points and incorporating evidence from the text into those points so that they make sense and that you build up a bigger picture of what's actually going on. You get more of an insight into the extract. Yes, you have a surface level story. This happens, that happens, but there's so much more going on. And that's what we do when we do commentary. We are dissecting a text to its essential ideas. And this student would got a remark that said, a thorough and thoughtful analysis. Although there were some technical errors in parts, minor technical errors, but overall this was a brilliant commentary, and they would have gotten somewhere between a band 1 and a band 2. And this is simply because with a band 1, they show perceptive appreciation of content and ideas, fluidly relates content to structure, form, audience, purpose, genre, style, shows keen awareness of intentions of the passage, what is actually going on with the language, analyzes text with sensitive and discriminating awareness. I mean, you saw the detail that the student is analyzing the text, of how language creates effects. That's very, very important, how language creates effects. Moves with ease between part and whole in discussing specific examples of language use. There were definitely specific examples, and the effect of the whole passage. Strong structure may be concise, quotation is used fluently and is embedded in the argument. So from all perspectives in the band, this has been a very, very good commentary. And so just try and keep in mind the sorts of things a student has done when approaching this kind of question. And that's the sort of thing you would need to do if you were confronted with, if you're confronted with any extract.